Welcome to the October the 13th taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie that will be shown on October the 20th. This is our history tape number 349, and we're so excited today to bring you a very special history interview. Now, most of the people that we interview have lived in Grand Prairie quite a few years and bring us their particular history, but today is an exception. We have a young lady with us today from South Grand Prairie area at the Grand Prairie ISD, located on South Beltline Road and 303, which is now known as Pioneer Parkway. This young lady has a very, very important job with the Grand Prairie Independent School District, and she is very qualified probably to do a history of Grand Prairie more so than anyone else in our city. And most recently, she called on the Grand Prairie Historical Organization for a very special workshop that she's going to tell us about. And I'm so pleased to bring Judy Wilkinson, who is a very important lady to history of Grand Prairie that has caught fire and is not only taking this fire through her own area, but passing it on to many of the teachers in our city. Judy, welcome to the set.
Thank you very much.
We're so glad to have you here to let people know that we're stirring things, even though we've been working on history for so many years.
Yes.
And now we have qualified people working on history. What brought you to this place?
Well, I've been very excited about history. We've been in Grand Prairie since 1982, and I taught at Grand Prairie High. 3 years ago, I was named a social studies facilitator for the district. We had not had anyone specifically assigned to social studies for several years. Since Faith Ann Adams had left, it had been given to other people who were primarily concentrating on other things. When they brought me in, one of the things I've always been interested in is local history. And then the state helped with this. We had been for several years developing something called the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, the TEX. And that was an effort on the part of the agency at the direction of the legislature to develop a new curriculum for the state that the state required. And we did it in all areas, and there was a committee appointed of people all over the state, and they wrote new learning standards or learning expectations for our children. And these took several years and went through several revisions and so on. And one of the major revisions that we saw was an expansion of community history. I've always seen social studies as growing. The children start with themselves, their family, their home, and grow to the school, and then from the school to the community, and from the community to the state, to the nation, to the world. And that expands their understanding. And so that's what but we need to focus on those first kinder through fourth grade is where we focus on the community. And so many of the teachers in Grand Prairie are not from Grand Prairie. They were not reared here. Many of them don't even live here. And so previously we sort of just did community in general, talked about functions of communities and so on without specifying the history and the development of Grand Prairie. But with the new text, it was necessary that we look at that directly. And so my job as facilitator is to help the teachers do the kinds of jobs that they would like to do. And I tried to find a way that I could do this, and it occurred to me that the place to go was the historical organization, because they were the people who had the knowledge, who could bring it to our teachers. So I made the call to Miss Barrett, and then she expanded for me, and you all presented a wonderful lesson and tour for us. And many people who are not teaching history even attended the session and have expressed to me many times how much they enjoyed it and how much they learned.
Well, it's wonderful to know that by a state directive, we are finally going to bring to the boys and girls through the bona fide educational system some of the things that could be very, very important to them, but certainly could be so important to Grand Prairie in the preservation of our history and the fact that they're making history as they go along. And I'd like for you to discuss a little bit this wonderful little booklet that you prepared, this workshop worksheets and some of the things that you provided for the teachers and some of the things that we went over that day and how you came about these particular subjects.
One of the things that I prepared and provided for the teachers is a booklet that identifies each one of Grand Prairie's significant landmarks. And the way I did that was simply Jan went through the files and collected for me all the little brochures that you all printed.
Yes.
And we reproduced them enlarged, and the pictures are wonderful and help the children to see immediately, and they can recognize, yes, I've seen that house, and they understand that it has historical significance. And I think that's very important to the children and makes them realize history isn't just George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, but it's happening in Grand Prairie too. And it has been here, and they need to learn to appreciate what we have here. Other than that, you all brought to us many wonderful things. Mr. Powers brought his photographs of olden times in Grand Prairie. Jan went to the library and secured a series of charts, which we have managed finally to reproduce into transparencies for our teachers to use, so they can present in the classroom to show how Grand Prairie grew from Mr. Deckman's original settlement, or
Town site.
his town site, and then how it expanded. It goes through 1974, and I hope with Ruthie's help we can bring it up to date and make this available to our teachers to provide them background so they can provide it for the children.
The teachers that attended this, do they have certain schedules that during the year that they bring this into their programs?
Oh, yes.
Or do they teach it with all just woven into their subjects?
Well, we have worked on a suggested curriculum. I do not require the time that it be taught, but I do suggest where and which unit it should be in. And they will be teaching it at various and sundry times. And they not only look at the history of Grand Prairie, but they're going to also look at the government of Grand Prairie, the geography of Grand Prairie, economics, the way that we've developed, how science and technology developments have changed Grand Prairie.
Okay. I'd like for you to go over these wonderful, wonderful visuals that we have,
Yeah,
that you provided these all to all of your teachers.
Well, I'm going to put them in the libraries at each school. That's
All
where
right,
they will be.
all right.
We'll also have them on disc so that the teachers can do slideshows with the children as well.
Oh, great.
And these are, the source of these are the Grand Prairie Public Library and the
Yes.
archives.
Yes.
We did not create these. This one, I think, is the introductory slide, and it shows how Grand Prairie has developed from the time of the Indians through the farming era, the arrival of the railroad, the arrival of the airplane, and I think probably this indicates the development of industry and so on in
Yes.
Grand Prairie.
Yes, that's wonderful.
This one shows that Grand Prairie was originally a part of, I've got it upside down and I can't see where I am, a part of the Peters Colony, which was one of the original colonies when Stephen F. Austin brought settlers to Texas. We were a part of Peters Colony, and it was with this was the first time I realized that Grand Prairie was a part of Peters Colony.
Oh, that's great. Okay, and this next.
And this one shows the settlement, and this is Grand Prairie, and I believe. Mm-hmm. And this shows where the people came, what place they were from in the United States when they came to Grand Prairie. Like the red is from Illinois, so the red reflected here are people who settled here from Illinois. And on each of them, when it was possible, they identified who the people were that settled in those areas. So people who are doing genealogical research might be interested in looking at this at the library.
That's Dallas area in the 1840s. And isn't that exciting?
Yes, and it shows, am I all right? Here is Grand Prairie, and it shows the stage route. It shows where Farmers Branch was, and of course this is modern day Grand Prairie. This would be a very small part of Grand Prairie then. It shows the Caddo Indian settlement on Village Creek, Bird's Fort, which currently has a marker, and it's over, and it's not in Birdville, which is interesting.
Yes.
It's really closer to Grand Prairie and Arlington than there. And so we can talk about things that children probably know about with reference and talk about how these things were important to us. And it shows how we are a part of the root system that developed through the area. And our location was very important.
1900 to 1926, Sarah?
We've made great strides. It also shows the original Grand Prairie Township and how it grew. And this is the Dalworth Township. Again, I was very interested to learn that it was Seventh-day Adventists who founded
Who settled that one,
this site. It shows the arrival when electricity came. It also has the interurban. For those who do not know, that was a trolley route that connected Dallas and Fort Worth. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've discussed this many times on your program. And then, of course, the importance of the railroad in Grand Prairie is illustrated as well. It shows when the various schools and churches were established and where they were located.
Okay, and this is the 1920s to the 40s.
Again, we see the highway, the pike.
The pike. Mm-hmm.
And what's the other term, the gentleman's name that advocated the building?
Bankhead.
Bankhead Highway, the gentleman in Congress who did it. We also have the establishment of the Texas motor coach industry here in Grand Prairie. The establishment of North American is also shown. The creation of Mountain Creek Lake. The arrival of street lighting. The arrival of the county justice being here. And the fact that we now have garbage service in Grand Prairie as well as street lighting. And the three main streets are identified as Main, Jefferson, and Center.
These are some general population centers in Texas, not necessarily just in Grand Prairie, but how it began down near the Gulf Coast.
And where they grew.
Yes. And this is Grand Prairie 1973. And
starting with the original township, and then the growth by 1941, and I don't know what LCS is. And these are Great South, I think they're doing Great Southwest
Industrial District.
Industrial District. And the beginning of Grand Prairie is actually identified as being right over here. And this is the 1909 incorporation as a city.
Yes. All right. Okay. And all of those now are going to be in the different libraries at the different schools,
yes,
where
ma'am.
the teachers can pick these up and use them on their overheads and for their presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think that's just wonderful. Now, I know that in the coming years we're going to have some anniversaries and some birthdays of different ones, and I thought I would bring those to your mind today and to see how you would think of these off the top of your head if school children through their teachers would be interested in those. And of course, next month in November is the 90th birthday of the Grand Prairie News.
Yes, ma'am.
And we have on microfilm in the Grand Prairie Library the first paper that was published, and which gives the editor's name and all of the things that were happening in Grand Prairie at that time. And we know that could not be worked into the curriculum this late in the season. So wouldn't it have been wonderful if we could have told you last year? Now, if we had all of these anniversaries in chronological order, and we don't have that in Grand Prairie. So isn't that something that we can work to, and that the schools can help us work to? Because even the schools, in 1902, the schools were first became ISDs, an independent school district.
But and I understand it was a very small vote that passed.
Yes, 79 to 62.
Yes.
It passed to become an ISD. And in about 1867, there was a school in Grand Prairie that was school number 44, and prior to that, school number 28. And but we don't have all of that researched, and wouldn't that be a wonderful thing for students to do, to research their own school system, to tell about the very beginning of the first school that was here, and the one that was here in 1902 that we do have a photograph of, and many things like that. And also the city of Grand Prairie this next year, on March the 20th, 1999, Grand Prairie will be celebrating their 90th birthday as a corporate city. So they follow right along behind the newspaper that's doing theirs then. And what do you think about things like that, that the schools can do to help the historical organization, as well as us helping you create the things that we already have about projecting to the future?
Well, one of the things that I would like to do is to organize a history day, a celebration of history, and coordinate that with Grand Prairie's birthday, and have our students present their research in some form or the other. There are many forms that they could do. They could do videos, they could do posters, they could do papers, etc.
Essays and etc.
And present them and let the historical organization judge that. There is a state competition and a national competition that they could take it on from that. And this year's national theme is how science and technology have impacted. And if we focused on Grand Prairie, we could see how industry has caused our growth and what it did to us. I think the building of Avion Village following the establishment of North American and so on would be a wonderful area of research for them.
And you know that they have applied for a state marker. Susan called last week and said they have approved our marker. We don't know when we're going to get it, but she is so very excited because
wonderful.
She researched this personally after we helped her to research her Grand Prairie significant landmark. She's done all, and it's taken her about 3 years to do all this with trial and error, sending it down, because they are so explicit about everything. Must be to the dot and to the tittle, as my grandmother would say it.
Yes.
And so they're going to be getting their state marker probably within the next 6 months or so, and maybe we could have that to have a big celebration and a historical thing that the boys and girls could be involved in.
Yes, and I understand Florence Hill is working on applying for a marker.
A state marker. They've already celebrated their 100th birthday. And that's what we need. We need a listing of all of the schools and their birthdays in chronological order, so someone could do a paper on that. Wouldn't that be wonderful if a student could provide all of that information for us and help us to do the legwork on that? What do you foresee the teachers and their interest? We don't want them to overshadow the 3 R's and all of the good things that they need to do, and especially computers, but how do you think computers could help us in this?
Well, for one thing, they can access well, I know the Library of Congress is online, and they can go to like census information and so on through the archives directly and get the original research. And this is primary source research, which is one of the things we try to teach our children. And it does fit into the 4 R's. This is writing, because they have to learn how to communicate what they have learned. And so they can, now, and it doesn't have to be informal writing, but they also need to know how to communicate visually and so on, and present it that way.
Is there a way that the teachers could encourage each school to appoint a school historian, like through their student council, For instance, Grand Prairie High School has been here a long time. We've never celebrated the original Grand Prairie High School because it was an 11-grade school with everything combined for a while. And if we could have someone to do that, we've documented the 40th anniversary of the Gopher Bowl.
Oh, yes.
3 years ago. And so we know when it began, but there's just so many things that we need, and it just takes everyone to help. Do you think students would really want to do these things?
I think some of them would, but it's just a matter of getting them organized and getting them working in that direction.
What do you think would cause the spark of real interest in that, something like these overheads?
Yes, and I think them seeing that history is here and that they need to appreciate what they have in Grand Prairie, that they don't have to visit Washington to see history, that Grand Prairie has history.
Now, we've spoken to you only about the history part of your social studies.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Under social studies, you also have languages under your direction.
Well,
Tell me what you do.
Well, social studies encompasses 7 different strands.
All right.
We not only teach history, we teach geography, we teach economics, we teach government, we teach citizenship, we teach culture, and I've left something out. Also skills, and we try to build their skills and give them more knowledge as we go through. The other thing was the impact. My other strand is science and technology and its impact on the world.
Oh my, that is a big one, isn't it?
Yes, and it changes our world so rapidly.
Yes.
And history is looking at change and as it occurs. Another of my responsibilities is foreign language.
Yes.
And that's one of the things. It was sort of just a gift that and it's opened a new world for me to look at. At this point, I'm trying to expand languages within our district. I would like very much to see us offer foreign language at the elementary level, since we've learned from brain research that they learn it so much, their brain is ready for it.
Yes.
And it closes down on us about 10 or 11 years old, and we don't start offering language until they're in middle school, and not at all middle schools at this point. Mostly it's just been focused at high school level, and I would really like to see us be able to bring it down.
Just think, you're building history as you're doing all of these assignments that are under your direction as really a director and a supervisor and all of these. Of all of the things that are under your direction, what do you have the greatest love for, ending in a preposition?
History.
History.
I was a world history teacher, and I loved it. I still love it. I loved presenting a new world and helping my children find a whole world, because I firmly believe that we live in Grand Prairie, yes, but it is a global village, that most of the things in Grand Prairie are connected to the outside world. And they have to appreciate not only where we are here, but what is in other places as well.
In about 2 minutes, tell us about the real Judy Wilkinson, when she was born, where she was born, where she went to school and taught school. Give me a recap in a few minutes.
I wasn't prepared for this. I was born in Van Zandt County, in a farmhouse, actually. I am a 6th-generation Texan.
Excellent.
My maiden name was Horn. My mother was a Crabtree, and then we've done some research, but we aren't quite back far enough to establish the whole lineage. But we're working on it. Mother and Daddy, with being a farm family, and I was born in 1941, and with the advent of the war and so many jobs were opening in the Dallas area, my father was classified 4F because he had an ulcer, and so we worked at North American.
All right.
And so we came to Dallas before I was a year old. And we lived here then in the Dallas area from then on. I graduated from high school in Seagoville.
All right.
My father worked at General Motors after they opened there, and he commuted from Seagoville to Arlington, right through Grand Prairie every day. Then, after I graduated from high school, I went to college at Abilene Christian. It was Abilene Christian College then,
Yes.
ACC, but they've changed its name now. I came back to the Dallas area because I enjoy living here. And I taught in Irving, in the opened MacArthur High School. And we were there for 8 years, and during that time I married my husband. And
His name?
John Wilkinson. And he had finished his librarian certification and degree, and he went to work for Southwest Texas. We moved to San Marcos. And I discontinued teaching for a few years, had our daughter, Tracy, and worked on my master's and finished it. And when she was 4 and started play school, I went back to work at Del Valley outside of Austin. And then when a position opened in San Marcos, and you sort of have to wait for someone to die to inherit a position there, there's so many applicants. And someone left in the middle of the year, and they released me from Del Valley, and I went to San Marcos High School and taught there for 5 years. And then my mother became ill, and I am the oldest, and I felt a real responsibility to come home. So we decided to come back to the Dallas area, and by doing that, between John and I, we doubled our salaries. So it was like adding another person to our family in the wage earning. And at that time, John got a position in Dallas very quickly. And so I stayed back in San Marcos and sold the house and applied. I was offered a position here in Grand Prairie and one in Plano the same week when I came in to apply. John drove from his assignment in Dallas to Grand Prairie one afternoon and to Plano another afternoon and said, "We're going to Grand Prairie."
He made the decision.
Yes, he did. And I was quite excited about it. I felt comfortable coming here. Mm-hmm. And then I spent several years at Grand Prairie High. You need to know, though, that every job I've ever had, I was hired as a math teacher.
A math teacher?
Yes, my minor is mathematics, and I enjoy teaching math.
Yes.
It's very orderly and nice, but it's not nearly as much fun as history.
It's history.
Because history is people, and people are far more interesting than numbers, even though they don't always obey the rules.
I am so glad that we found out about the real Judy, because you may teach math, but you preach history.
Yes, I do.
And that's very important, and we're just so blessed to have had you in the leadership role that you're in so that you could involve the community, and now you're going to involve the students, and the students back to the community. It's going to be that wonderful completed circle that we need to make history more perfect in Grand Prairie. I want to thank you for everything you've done for the students, and thank you for what you've done for the history of Grand Prairie.
Thank you. I don't know, I believe you are our icon for history in Grand Prairie. I think you've done a great deal for it, and whenever I say that I need someone from the community for history, people always say Ruthie Jackson is the person
I just keep the files. I just keep the files. Thank you so much for being with us.
You.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.